Everyone, I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this morning's session. Welcome back if you did get a chance to attend part one yesterday, or maybe you've attended it previously and you never got a chance to attend part two. So we're just going to complete the VAT return process in today's session. So looking at tab 3 of the VAT return. So really quite a simple set of 3 tasks to complete. But we'll be running through them just to explain why you're doing them so you can understand a little bit of the background and have that, I suppose, just that better understanding of why you're doing, giving you a bit more confidence. As normal, just before we get stuck in, we'll run through a little bit of housekeeping. It's the same old housekeeping that we cover every time. So you don't need a microphone, which means if you've got any questions for us, pop them in the questions panel. You just click that little speech bubble icon on your toolbar. It'll expand the panel. Any comments or questions, pop them into that panel at the bottom. Remember to click send, otherwise I won't see them. Because it's just myself this morning, do bear with me when you submit them, but I'll try and get around to them as best I can. If I'm not sure, because let's face it, VAT is massive. It's a massive topic, whether you're UK based or based in Ireland. It's a huge old topic. So if I'm not sure about something, it may be that I need to go away, just check something, and then I'll just drop you an email as normal. If anyone wants a copy of today's slides, they are available to download during the session. So do get them if you want them. There's the standard full color version of the slides that I'm using, and there's what we term the print-friendly version with the color stripped out. Now, as normal, the session is being recorded. You'll receive a link to the recording on your follow-up email, which is always sent about an hour after we finish. It's done automatically. So you'll get a link to today's recording, a link so you can start registering for upcoming webinars. We've got a full month of webinars booked in. Loads of sessions there. Unfortunately, we've had to move a couple of them around just because of some training requirements over the month. But other than that, they are all booked in, and you'll be able to get yourself registered. There'll also be a link to our recordings page. So if you've missed any topics, you want to go back, or maybe there's a topic you're interested in, but we're not covering that in the foreseeable, then obviously take advantage of the recordings. Right, this is what I'm covering in today's session. So a little bit of background, just a quick reminder for anyone that may be if you're an accountant and you're doing both a UK return and you're doing Irish returns, just mention a little bit about version 33. Demonstration wise, we're going to cover those key 3 tasks. Again, I'll point out any differences along the way between UK and Ireland. Pretty virtually identical apart from the submission process. But again, I'm going to cover both scenarios. And then just right at the end, additional support. And of course, if there's anything outstanding, I'll try my best to pick those up. And I'll better just switch on the questions panel, just in case you do have any questions. There we go. I'll be able to see them now as they come through. Right, so we're going to start today, just a little bit of background. And I'm going to start with just telling you a little bit about version 33, just as a reminder, just in case anyone has maybe signed up but not been able to make it today. So we are up to version 33, and shortly you'll start to hear about version 33.1, some big changes in version 33.1. You might hear about other options coming soon as well, such as the cloud version of Sage 50 Account. So this time it is fully in the cloud. So watch this space. You're going to hear more about that probably towards the end of next month. That's when you're likely to start hearing about it. But there will be a cloud version. So if anyone uses remote data access, or you might even use remote desktop here and there if you run across different networks, then hopefully the cloud version will make it that much easier for you. But from a VAT perspective, version 33 being out, was released around about end of November of last year. So it's available to download and install. One of the enhancements was to the, I suppose, the regional settings within your software. So it really comes into its own if you're in a position where you have an Irish VAT return and a UK VAT return. If they're on the same PC, just when you go into those companies, it'll pick up your your options based around your country code within Sage, as opposed to using your Windows regional settings, which has always done and always been a bit of a pain. I'm going to describe it as if you were in that position. So no need now to switch regional settings within your Windows version operating system. You just go into the software, but you need to be on version 33 for that. If you need to find out more, I've included a link on the slides. Anyway, let's get stuck into the demos itself. So just as a bit of a recap on what we've done so far, remember the VAT return, it's got 3 key steps at the top, 3 tabs. In session 1, we covered steps 1, prepare your VAT return, where you were entering, you're taking it back up, entering your date range, you had the verification settings listed, and then you click calculate. Step 2 was to review any verification, any verification issues that were identified, to see if they were you needed to do anything or not. You had the option to post adjustments, or looking at checking your figures and printing out reports, and then finally, of course, reconciling. So flagging the VAT return to say, right, I've agreed everything, these are my figures. So that's what we covered in part 1. We're now up to part 3, and as you can see, side by side, other than the VAT return itself, on the left there, the options are pretty much the same. You've got the same 3 options along the bottom: print, verification results, view adjustments. The VAT transfer options the same. The submission process slightly different depending on your region. Cover both of those today. And then the option to record your payment. Add attachments, that's something you can do in step 2 of the VAT return, or even after you've reconciled. So you can add attachments and view attachments via that option. Not really covering that in depth today, but I can, if anyone requests that, I can always cover that separately. So let's start with the VAT transfer, the first option of step 3. Just to give you a little bit of context, first of all. Now, apologies for the wordiness of the slides, but I just want to quickly cover that. Now, what the VAT transfer does, and it's really simple. It's, if you're quite happy to use it, it's one click and it's done. Simple as that. So cutting quite a long story, very short, one click and it's done for you. But so you've got an understanding of why you're doing it and what's actually happening, is that when you post transactions, so let's say you've got a sales transaction, it's got VAT attached to it. The VAT element of your sales transactions will generally build up in your sales tax control account. Similarly, for any purchase transactions, the VAT element will build up in your purchase tax control account. So the default numbers on your nominal ledger, 2200, 2201. So that VAT will just continue to build up in those nominal codes. Now, the idea of doing a VAT transfer is that once you've done your VAT return, the reconciled sales VAT and the reconciled purchase VAT, you journaling or transferring that via a journal, you're transferring that out of those 2 control accounts across to your VAT liability. And what you'd be left with against your sales and purchase tax control accounts is the VAT that you haven't yet accounted for. Now, chances of that being 0 is very unlikely. You'll have probably entered additional transactions beyond the end of your VAT period. So the chances of you doing those journals manually or automatically, and then being left with nothing in your sales tax and purchase tax control, virtually nil. You're probably always going to have balances in there. Now, the idea of transferring it to the VAT liability nominal code is that the difference between the sales tax that you transfer and the purchase tax is probably going to be what you owe. And then when you come to pay your liability or recover the VAT from HMRC or the revenue, you will post a bank payment or bank receipt and it will zero that VAT liability off. So that's the theory behind it. So clears the reconciled VAT amounts out of the two control accounts. It leaves obviously the unreconciled VAT against those two control accounts, and the difference between the figures that you've transferred will be on the VAT liability. Now, the common question, what if I've never done this? Well, if you've never done it before, either manually or via the little wizard within the VAT return, it just means that you would have built up balances. So all the VAT that you've charged on sales and purchase transactions, they would have just accumulated. So you're probably going to have some large values. And you'll probably find over the years when you've been recording your payment for VAT or the receipt of VAT that you've been doing that against the VAT liability, and that probably would have accumulated a large value as well. So at some point, you might need to post some journals to sort of net those figures off. If you need some advice on that, get in touch with our support team. It's not a big problem, just a case of you'll probably need to do some journals just to sort of marry everything off. Now again, behind the scenes, if we just take UK as an example, when you calculate your VAT return and you reconcile it and then you do the bank transfer, it'll do a journal for the value from box 1. So that's the value that's going to be journaled out of your sales tax control to the VAT liability. The figure that's taken for the purchase tax amount is box 4. Now that's sort of true. If there is a figure in box 2, it'll be box 4 minus box 2 that transfers across, but unlikely that you're going to have a figure in box 2 if you're in the UK. Ireland, pretty similar. So to transfer the value from box 1, purchase tax amount, a bit more complicated. Always just that little bit more complicated on an Irish VAT return. Obviously loads of tax codes and things like that in use. But again, I've put that on there. But you don't really need to worry about it. What the software is going to do, it's going to post a journal for you. So one click to do that. If you're doing it manually, it will be along these lines. So you'd go into nominal codes, journal entry, and you would enter a 4-line journal along those lines. And all you need to do is obviously make sure you've got the debits and credits the right way around and you've got the right values, but also when you specify your date, the one we'd normally recommend is you would do those journals on the last day of your VAT period. So if you need to backdate them, that's fine. Now again, to cut that long story very, very short, in your software, in the VAT return wizard on the right, you've got the VAT transfer option. So you've got this option to click post journal, so one click and it's done. It does those journals for you. Once you do that, it'll flag that area. It'll flag the VAT return itself to say that's been completed, and it will grey out that option so you can't do it again. You don't want to be going in and doing it multiple times. Right, let's switch across to my screen, so my desktop. And we'll run through that as an example. So I'm just going to quickly pick up Lorraine's question there, if you don't mind. So Lorraine's just saying we're running Sage and Sage 50 together for a financial year prior to moving to Sage 50. And you've run VAT returns on both systems just to ensure that they match. Quite common that, Lorraine, believe it or not. Very common that whether you're switching from one bit of Sage software to another, or other software to Sage, or even Sage to something else. It's quite common that people will sit there and they'll be entering or duplicating their efforts, keying it in twice. So you're going to be moving to Sage 50. Let's have a quick look. Right, so your question there is, what do you do about once you've moved, how can you ensure that previous transactions, I think that's the gist of your question there, how do you ensure that they aren't picked up on future returns? So what you'd need to do, you still run that VAT return, it's just you wouldn't make a submission. So you would need to decide if you generate a return on essentially 2 bits of software, which, and let's say they're both the same, obviously you can only make one submission. So you need to decide which one you're going to do that from. I'm going to show you a little trick in a moment as well when we get to the submission element. Hope that makes sense. But ordinarily you would just generate the 2 returns, make sure you reconcile them, and then you just decide which one you're going to submit. Right, let's go into the VAT area. We've got the VAT return that we generated yesterday. So the one that ran from October 25 to December 25. So we can either double click it or we can highlight it, click VAT return, and it will take us into the VAT return itself. So this is the first task, as it were. Now it says the date. That will default to the end of your VAT period, which it has in my case. You can see it's pulled through the relevant amounts for me as well. So I've put some values in here just so that some figures are picked up in box 2, just to confirm it's not just box 4, although chances are these days you will not have a figure in box 2. But if you do, the figure for the purchase tax amount, is going to be box 4 minus box 2. Now, you've no reason to change these at all, these figures. It would let you change the date, but I would just accept what's there. All you do is you click Post Journal. You may or may not get this, depends where you are with regard to your financial year end. So I'll just going to click yes to that. I want to continue, and you'll see it grays it out and it ticks it to see it's transferred. That's it done. It's literally as simple as that. If I didn't get that message about mine being outside of the financial year, that would have been absolutely fine. With just one click, that's it done. Now, if I close out of that, you'll see against this VAT return, in the VAT transferred column, it now has a Y. So I can see that's being completed. You'll see I've got some older returns that have an N. Now, an N would indicate it's not being transferred, or it hasn't been transferred from within the VAT return itself. So I've never come into this specific return and clicked that Post Journal option. Now, the big question, should you or should you not? Someone's bound to be sat there thinking that. Should I just do them now? Depends if they're being done in the past or not. The only way you're going to be able to tell would be to go into something like the nominal codes area, find your VAT liability nominal code. I say probably find your VAT liability because it's going to be that much easier. There's going to be less activity against that one. Obviously, sales tax and purchase tax control, you're going to have loads of transactions against those. All your sales and your purchase transactions that are VATable, they'll be on there. Much easier to track it down against the VAT liability. So I check the activity, and what you're looking for are journals for the end of the relevant VAT periods. Now, by default, they would have VAT liability if you use the automatic option, but if you haven't used the automatic option, you might have put something else in the details. So this is where you'd need to look to see, right, have I done it manually via a manual journal entry? So that's going to be the easiest place to check that, whether you have or haven't. Again, if you need some advice on that, get in touch with our support team. They can look at that with you and maybe give you some advice on how to get into maybe the right position. But just going back to the VAT ledger, obviously this one, it now has a Y in that VAT transferred column, indicating that I have done the journals from within the VAT return itself. So that's step 1. Now I want to quickly cover some questions just to really just spell them out again. I'll go back to the slides for these. So common questions, variations of what we've sort of just covered. What if I've never done this before? Well, have you not? How do you know? Again, check that nominal activity of that VAT liability nominal code. So 2202 by default. Have you done it? Have you not? If you've never done it before, just means that you'll have accumulated these large values against two control accounts and probably the VAT liability. So it's probably going to be a case of doing either backdating those journals by going into the VAT return and processing it, or doing a manual journal to get your accounts into the right position. Year end is probably a good time to do that, or at the end of a VAT period. If you're partway through a VAT period, I would just say hang on until you've done your next VAT return. When you reconcile it, give our support team a call if you need to. That's a good opportunity to get that sorted. Third bullet there, the option is available on my old returns. Should I click it? Goes back to that second point. You should only click it if you need to do it. Have you done it manually previously or not? If you've done it manually for those previous returns, then you don't want to be clicking on option, otherwise you're just going to be duplicating it. Fourth bullet there. Why do my old returns have an N in that VAT transfer column? It's just because you haven't done that VAT transfer from within the VAT return itself. And also, what if it's in a previous financial year? Can I still do that? There's nothing to stop you doing it. You'll be warned, but not really going to cause you a problem. The only thing that might prevent you from doing it is the lock date. If you've got that switch on, you're going to either get an error or a warning if you try to do that. It depends on your access levels. But easy enough to sort out if you're not sure. But get in touch with our support team if you need a little bit of advice on it. Again, any questions you think of, keep them coming. I'll try my best to pick those up as we're running through. Right, next we're going to look at submitting your VAT return. Now this does differ depending what region you're based in. I'm going to start with the UK. Now in the UK, when Making Tax Digital was introduced, seems like a long time ago that now, one of the requirements under Making Tax Digital is that your VAT return, it needed to be submitted online. Now, submitting a VAT return online was nothing new to CH50 at the time. It's something that you could do. But you could also, at the time, you could have done it manually. But a lot of people were finding it was so easy to do, they were just doing it online anyway. Now, under MTD, it has to be done online. So direct from your software. You can't just log on to your government gateway account these days and key in your figures. You're not able to do that under MTD. It's one of the requirements. So you've got to submit it via software. Now, to be able to submit via your software, if you haven't already done this, you would need to go into Settings, Company Preferences, and the VAT tab. And you need to check two things. One, that your VAT registration number is entered. And also that MTD is enabled. You would expect it to be enabled, but that's where you can check it. Otherwise, if it's not ticked, when you try to click the submission button, you'll just see you haven't enabled it yet. Now, if anyone is in a position where they've got a group of companies and they need to do a group VAT submission, then I've included a link because you will need what we term the MTD module, which enables you to, once you've generated your returns in each of your companies, it enables you to extract that information from each of those companies to create a merged VAT return for the group and then do a single submission. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play a little video at this point, which will give you an idea of what that submission process looks like. Let's see if I can find the right option. That would probably help. we go. Right, going to play this video. I'll come back to you live in just a couple of minutes. In this demonstration, we're going to show you the steps to submit your VAT return online. We join the demonstration where we're on step 3 of the VAT return, so it's already been reconciled, and we're ready to submit it online. So on the right hand side, we click Submit Online. The online submission wizard appears, and you click Next. Ensure that the correct company name and VAT registration number appears, and then click Next. An authority page appears, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you can then click Continue. You're then prompted to sign in with your Government Gateway user ID and password. Once entered, click Sign In. You then click Grant Authority. You'll then be prompted to choose your period, and it should default to the correct one. Just make sure this is correct, and then select the checkbox to say that you agree to the following HMRC declaration, and then click Submit to HMRC. Once completed, a congratulations message appears, indicating you successfully submitted your VAT return to HMRC. You click Close. You then return to the VAT return, and as you can see, the VAT return is now flagged as being submitted. Right, I'm back live with you. So that's submitting your VAT return online if you are based in the UK. So initially, when you've reconciled your VAT return, you've done your VAT transfer, you click the option to submit online, and it's just a case of following that wizard through to make your submission. As you've just seen, little wizard that you follow through, just a case of you sort of, I suppose, logging into your HMRC account. So entering your gateway ID and your password, making sure that the correct period is selected that you're submitting for, and then just letting it upload your VAT return. Now, a lot of people used to think under MTD, and you might still be thinking that way, that it would be more than the VAT return that gets submitted, and that's not the case. I think because of that requirement under MTD where you had to use compatible accounting software and submit your VAT return online, a lot of people thought that things like your transactional information would be sent, and it's not. The only thing that's declared to HMRC on a UK VAT return is boxes 1 to 9, whatever those values are. Obviously, other little bits of information as well, such as the period you're submitting for, your VAT registration number, but largely speaking, the only information that is included in your submission is the values in boxes 1 to 9. Right, okay, let's move on. We'll do the equivalent for Ireland. Now, Ireland I don't have a video for. Ireland is still submitted to a certain extent. It's submitted manually. You're not keying in your figures, but the VAT return is submitted manually. So on an Irish return, when you generate your VAT return and you reconcile it, what it will do, it will create an XML file. So that file basically contains your VAT return information. It creates that XML file. Obviously, it's in the right format for you to upload to the Revenue Online Service, or ROS for short. So it's just a case of you opening the folder it should default to the right folder for you, and you'll be able to select your file then. And then if you log on to the Revenue Online Service, you will be able to upload that XML file. So you're not sitting there keying it in. And once you've done that, you would just go onto the VAT return, and there's a little tick box there to mark as submitted. So you just tick the box to say, right, I've done that now. So again, nice simple process. So probably, I think the UK processed a little bit quicker because you're not having to manually log in as such and then go to the right area and upload it. But still a straightforward task, that one. Nothing really there to catch you out. Third task that we're going to be covering today is that final option, that recording of the payment or the receipt, depending on what position you're in. Now, why are you going to post a payment or receipt? Well, first of all, it represents the payment or the refund to HMRC or the revenue. You're recording it to obviously ensure that your bank balance is accurate. So you always want your accounts to obviously reflect real life. Now, a couple of things to mention on that one. Obviously, it's possible you can always close out of the VAT return. You could do this one manually just by going into bank accounts and bank payment or bank receipt. So you could enter it that way. You could also do it if anyone uses bank feeds. So if you pay by direct debit, for instance, you might not be entirely sure when that's going to go. So it might be that you don't enter it in this way, and you just say, right, well, when that's taken from my bank, it'll download via bank feeds, and I'll just create the transaction there and then. You might even have a rule set up to do that for you. Now, if that's the case, what you can do is you can just go into the VAT return and say, right, that's now processed. It's been done. But if you want to do it manually or within the VAT return, again, it's nice and quick. You just click the button. The only thing that's going to be any different is that you will need to specify the date. It's the only thing that you need to enter on that option. Now, if you were doing it manually, so let's say you went into bank accounts, bank payment, bank receipt, depending on if you've got a liability or not, then you would use the date. So obviously use the actual date. Your nominal, you would choose a nominal for your VAT liability, which by default is 2202. In the net, you would enter the full value of the payment or the refund, and then you would use a T9 tax code, T9 being a non-VATable tax code. You don't want this payment or receipt to be picked up on your next return. So you would use a T9 tax code. And then all you would do is you would open your VAT return and you would tick the box to say you've done that. But like we've done for the other options, much easier to use the option within the VAT return itself. All you'll do is specify the right bank account that the money is being paid out of or being paid into, pop in the date, your reference, which will be your VAT registration number, details, which will say VAT payment or VAT refund, again, depending on whether it's you have a liability or not, and then the amount. And then you click post bank payment, and once it's done, the option will grey out to say, right, this is now complete. Right, let's just go across to my screen and we'll quickly run through that one. So we'll pop back into the VAT return itself. Just on the subject of the submission, so let's say this was an Irish return, we would just tick that box and you'll see it changes to submitted. But coming back to the payment, it's picked up my default bank. If for whatever reason it's coming out a different bank account, just click the drop down, choose the relevant bank. Pop in your date, just use today's date. It is the 27th, looked a bit unusual that. So 27th of February. Now, always get asked about that one. Why don't I enter the last day of the VAT period? You wouldn't for the payment or the refund. You want it to reflect sort of real life, I suppose. So you want it to sort of correlate to your, I suppose, your bank account to a certain extent. So you don't want to backdate that. You just accept today's date or whatever date maybe if you're backdating it, whatever date the actual payment actually went out of your bank. Your reference, it can be changed, as can the details, but the defaults will be your VAT registration number and also VAT payment as the details, or VAT refund if you are in that position. The amount, with it being a UK return in this case, is the figure that's in box 5. So all I've had to do here is specify the date, and I'm ready to click post bank payment. Now, something that wasn't on the screenshot when I was sharing this slide is this little option here, pay via e-banking. If anyone uses the e-payments option to pay your suppliers, you can record that in exactly the same way. You wouldn't use that if you've got like a direct debit agreement or you're just wanting to do it manually. So you would use this when you pay your suppliers online. You build up that sort of payment details file, and then you upload that to your online banking. So you can include your HMRC and revenue payment in that way if required. But you wouldn't see that unless you've got the e-banking options enabled within your software. So all I've done here is right bank account. I've just got to pop in today's date or whatever date is required. I leave the reference, details and amount as is, and I just click post bank payment. Obviously, I've gone beyond the end of my financial year, so I get the standard message. So yes to that, and that's it done. It's now flagged as having been paid. Nice and straightforward, that one. So largely speaking, when you get to step 3 at the top, you've got 3 tasks to complete. VAT transfer, essentially one click. The record payment or refund, you're specifying the date, then it's one click. And then depending on whether you're UK or Ireland, you've got your submission to make. So nice and easy to finish off that VAT return. You don't have to do them immediately after reconciling your return. Obviously, we reconcile this return on yesterday's session. So you can leave that once it's reconciled if required. But try not to forget about it. Now, in my case, the status shows as submitted, paid, it's got a Y, VAT transfer Y. So those 3 tasks are complete. And that brings us to the end of the demos for this morning's session. If you do have any questions, so let me just see if I can share the relevant screen. If you've got any questions, if you want to quickly pop them in there, and I'll try and pick them up before we disappear. Remember, you can download the handout as well if you'd like a copy of the slides. Just while we're waiting, just to remind you that our Help Centre is a great source of information. When you get into the Help Centre, there will be a panel for VAT, or I think it's tax, it's called tax these days. And then when you go into that area, it will then break off between region. So you'll be able to choose Great Britain and Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland, just to ensure that you get the right information for your region. So do check that out. Remember, loads of great webinars booked in. We start next week with our invoice badging series. There's loads of other sessions on there as well, but the badging series, it starts next week. If you can't make it, we are repeating the same sessions the following weeks. So there's almost like 2 sets of the sessions running. You can mix and match, but if you attend 5 of the 6 topics plus 1 of the quiz sessions, you will earn that digital badge. So do get yourself signed up if you want to learn more about invoicing. Loads of other topics in there, including bank feeds, always popular, that one. If you aren't yet using bank feeds, get yourself signed up. Laura will take you through just to explain the benefits and how you go about using it. So watch out for that follow-up email and get yourself registered. Right, just about brings us to the end of the session then. So I'm going to quickly take the opportunity to thank you for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed the 2 sessions and you're feeling a little bit more confident. We used to run these as a single session, Let us know if you think that's a good idea or not. Pop it on the survey. But we used to find there was quite a bit to take in. So we get you to the point where you've reconciled your VAT return, almost so you can relax at that point, but then need a separate session just to remind you you've got these 3 tasks still to complete. But let us know your thoughts. There'll be that survey to complete as you leave. If you take the minute to do that, greatly appreciated. The follow-up email, it's got a link to today's recording, a link to the registration page, and a link to our main recordings page that will be with you in around about an hour's time. Now, I've got no outstanding questions. If you think of anything, get in touch. You can reply to any of the emails, the webinar emails. They will be directed either to myself or to our team mailbox, and we'll pick those up as soon as we can. But otherwise, have a fab weekend. If anyone is on this afternoon's session, trying to think what we're covering. I think we're covering Copilot today. If anyone wants to find out about Copilot, hopefully I'll see you on this afternoon session. I think that's at 2. But otherwise, hopefully we'll see you on some of next week's sessions and you can start earning that badge. Many thanks.